Before light existed, there was only silence, a void so deep that even time dared not move. Then, from that infinite stillness, something stirred. A sound, small at first, then thunderous, echoing through eternity, a voice that shattered the dark. Let there be light. And there was blinding brilliance tore across the emptiness like fire unleashed. Galaxies spun into motion, stars ignited like sparks flung from the hand of God. Oceans were born, mountains rose, winds began to sing. The universe itself trembled at the majesty of creation. Yet amid the infinite wonders, the Creator's gaze turned to a small corner of his masterpiece. The earth, the soil was rich and silent, waiting. Rivers glittered beneath the newborn sun, flowing through untouched valleys. The air was warm with promise. And there, in the heart of that divine garden, the Creator knelt. His hands reached into the dust. From the earth, he formed shape, shoulders, limbs, a face. The breath of eternity hovered over clay. The form lay still, lifeless, until the Creator drew close and with infinite tenderness breathed. The dust inhaled. The silence broke at a gasp, the first breath of a man. His eyes opened to a world drenched in color and sound. He looked around, bewildered by beauty. The sky like a vast sea of gold, the trees heavy with fruit that shimmered like jewels, the rivers reflecting light like glass. Every sense flooded him at once. The wind brushed his face as if it knew his name. The voice spoke again, deep and resounding yet filled with warmth. Adam. The name reverberated through creation. The mountains heard it. The rivers carried it. Even the stars seemed to pause. Adam stood, the breath of God still burning in his chest. He felt the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, the rhythm of life flowing through his veins. Around him, animals moved, lions with eyes like amber flame, doves fluttering like living snow. They looked to him, unafraid. The voice guided him through the garden. Eden, a paradise of endless peace. Adam touched the leaves that glowed with life, tasted fruit sweeter than any dream. The air hummed with the presence of the Creator. Every moment was joy. Every breath was worship. But as the days passed, a quiet loneliness began to echo in the man's heart. He walked among creatures, naming them one by one. Yet none shared his voice, his spirit, his gaze. When he lay beneath the stars at night, even the beauty of heaven could not fill the space beside him. The Creator saw. Sleep came upon Adam. Not ordinary sleep, but deep, divine stillness. The world hushed. From Adam's side, the Creator took one rib, a single piece of the man's being, and from it he formed another. When Adam awoke, the light of dawn spilled through the trees. And there she stood, the woman. Her eyes reflected the same divine spark that burned within his own. Her presence was both new and familiar, like a melody he had always known but never heard until that moment. Adam's breath caught. She smiled. He stepped closer, his voice trembling with awe. Flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. And the heavens rejoiced. The rivers sang louder. The flowers bloomed brighter. The wind itself danced around them. Together they walked through Eden, hand in hand. The first love story, written by the Creator himself. Days in paradise felt eternal. Adam and the woman laughed, ran, and rested beneath the shade of trees that bowed under golden fruit. They spoke with the voice of God in the cool of the evening, their hearts unburdened, their souls at peace. But even in perfection, there was mystery. In the center of the garden stood two trees. One shimmered with life everlasting. The other pulsed with something darker. The tree of a knowledge of good and evil. Its branches swayed though no wind touched them. Its fruit glowed with forbidden beauty. The Creator's voice echoed across the garden. Of every tree you may freely eat, he said, but of this one you shall not. For in the day you eat of it, you will surely die. The words lingered in the air like a shadow across sunlight. Adam felt their weight, even if he did not yet understand it. The woman listened, her gaze drawn to the mysterious tree for only a heartbeat before turning away. Time flowed like music. Seasons rose and fell softly, unnoticed in their perfection. The world knew no pain, no sorrow. Every leaf sang. Every breath was worship. And yet, something unseen began to stir to the edge of Eden, where the light dimmed into mist, a ripple passed through the air. The ground shifted slightly, as though something ancient had awakened. Eyes sharp and knowing, opened in the darkness that a voice, smooth as silk, cold as night, whispered through the trees. Beautiful, isn't it? The birds fell silent. The breeze froze. The whisper coiled through the branches, unseen, patient. It watched the man and woman walking hand in hand, laughing in innocence. It listened to their joy, their trust, their love. And it hated it. Eden, the jewel of creation, was unaware that a shadow had entered its borders. The stars still glimmered. The rivers still sang. But the peace of paradise trembled, faintly, invisibly, as night fell. Adam and the woman lay beside the river, the water reflecting the sky's light. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, the rhythm of life itself. He closed his eyes, whispering to the wind, "Everything is perfect." But far beyond the trees, something smiled in the dark, and in the stillness between heartbeats, creation itself seemed to hold its breath, as if it already knew that perfection would not last forever. Morning rose like gold spilling over Eden. Dew shimmered on the grass, and the air smelled of fruit and light. The woman walked among the trees, her hands brushing against the leaves as she hummed softly. Birds circled above her, their songs echoing across the sky. The world was calm. The world was whole. But beyond the calm, in the shadow where sunlight dared not rest, something watched. Its eyes glowed faintly, ancient and unblinking. It had been there before time began, before the stars were hung. Once radiant, now twisted, its beauty had turned to bitterness. It moved without sound, sliding through the tall grass, its form shifting like smoke that it saw her, alone. The serpent's voice rose, smooth and quiet, coiling around her thoughts before she even turned her head. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? She startled, looking around. Her eyes found the creature, its scales gleaming like wet bronze, its movements graceful and strange. "No," she said softly. "We may eat the fruit of every tree except one, the tree in the center of the garden. God said not to eat it or even touch it, lest we die." The serpent tilted its head, amusement flickering in its tone. "Die," it whispered. "No, you will not surely die." She frowned. The voice was soothing, persuasive, almost kind. The serpent's eyes gleamed like molten gold. "God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. You will be like him, knowing good and evil." The words hung in the air like a forbidden melody. She turned her gaze to the tree. The fruit glowed faintly in the sunlight, as if aware of her attention. It looked beautiful, almost holy. The serpent moved closer, circling the trunk slowly. "He made you in his image," it said. "Why keep you from what makes you complete?" Her heart beat faster. The tree seemed alive, pulsing softly, drawing her nearer. She reached out, stopped, then reached again. Her fingers brushed the smooth skin of the fruit. Nothing happened. No thunder. No voice. No death. The serpent smiled. She plucked it. The moment it left the branch, the air quivered, a silence too perfect to be peace. She lifted it to her lips. The fruit shimmered in her hand like captured sunlight. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Then she bit. The taste was sweet, impossibly so. Light burst behind her eyes. Her breath caught. The world shifted. Everything looked sharper, louder, alive with hidden meaning. A strange exhilaration coursed through her veins. She felt awake for the first time. She turned and saw Adam walking toward her through the garden, his face calm, his steps steady. She called to him, her voice trembling with both joy and fear. Adam, she said, look, it is good. He stopped, his eyes on the fruit in her hand. For a long moment, he said nothing. The garden was silent around them, as though creation itself was waiting. What have you done? He whispered. Her voice was soft but sure. I ate it, and I did not die. She took his hand and pressed the fruit into it. Taste, and you will see. It opens the eyes. We will be like him. He looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had once mirrored innocence and peace. He saw love there, but also something new, hunger, fire, awareness. He could not imagine being apart from her. The fruit trembled in his grasp. He raised it to his lips and bit. The moment he did, a tremor ran through the garden. The wind fled. The rivers paused. The light dimmed, not by cloud or shadow, but by grief. Adam looked at Eve. For the first time, he saw her, truly saw her, and with that sight came shame. They looked down and saw their nakedness. Innocence fell from them like a garment. The garden's song turned to silence. The trees bent low. The voice did not speak, and its absence was unbearable. They wove leaves together, trembling, hiding their bodies from the sun. The serpent watched from the distance, its eyes gleaming with triumph before vanishing into the thorns. Evening came. The sound of footsteps moved through the garden, soft but mighty, familiar yet dreadful. The air grew heavy. The voice called out at him. He froze. His heart pounded. He clutched Eve's hand, and they hid among the trees. The voice came again, sorrowful and searching. Where are you? Adam's lips trembled. I heard you in the garden, he said, and I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid. Who told you that you were naked? The question pierced the silence like light through darkness. Have you eaten of the tree I commanded you not to eat? Adam's voice broke. The woman you gave me, she gave me fruit of the tree, and I ate. The voice turned to Eve. What have you done? Tears welled in her eyes. The serpent deceived me, she said, and I ate. The garden shuddered. Thunder rumbled beyond the horizon. The wind carried a sorrow too deep for words. The voice spoke, not in rage, but in heartbreak. Because you have done this, the ground is cursed for your sake. In pain you shall labor all your days. By the sweat of your brow shall you eat your bread, until you return to the dust from which you came. Then to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all creatures. On your belly shall you crawl, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He shall crush your head, and you shall strike his heel. Lightning flashed. The sky wept. Adam looked at Eve. Her tears fell freely now, mixing with the rain. The voice spoke once more, gentle, final. The man has become as one of us, knowing good and evil. He shall not take also of the tree of life and live forever. The air split open. Fire blazed at the edge of the garden. Two mighty beings appeared, radiant and fierce, swords of flame in their hands. Adam and Eve stood at the threshold, trembling. Behind them lay paradise, glowing, alive, eternal. Ahead stretched the unknown, the wilderness, the world beyond perfection. Go, said the voice. Adam took Eve's hand. Together, they stepped forward. The fire closed behind them. The light of Eden faded until it was only a memory. They stood beneath a sky that no longer sang. The ground was cold. The wind carried sorrow. Yet within them still burned the breath of the Creator, faint but alive. Eve turned to Adam. Will he ever return? He looked to the horizon, where the stars flickered like distant promises. I do not know, he said softly, but his breath is still in us. They walked into the darkness, their hands entwined, the echo of paradise fading behind them. And somewhere, far beyond sorrow, hope began to stir. Darkness lingered in the garden after the echo of defiance had settled. The air, once light with the melody of life, now hung heavy with a silence that seemed to mourn. Adam sat on the ground, his hands trembling, soil and tears blending between his fingers. The fruit's taste still burned on his tongue, a mixture of sweetness and ruin. Around him, The leaves that once shimmered with divine glow began to fade, curling inward like something dying. The light that had danced on the trees dimmed, as if heaven itself had turned its face away. Eve stood beside him, her eyes wide with the horror of realization. What they had gained in knowledge was crushing them with its weight. For the first time, she felt cold. A wind passed through the garden, carrying no warmth, only the sharp chill of something lost. The creatures that once moved close to them now fled into the shadows, their eyes glimmering with confusion and fear. Creation itself seemed to recoil. Adam looked toward the eastern horizon, where the glory of the Creator once broke through every morning in radiant light. But now the sky was veiled, trembling between gold and ash. He whispered her name, Eve, and it came out as a cry swallowed by the wind. She turned to him, and in that moment both knew the same truth. The innocence that bound them to the heart of God had shattered, and a voice moved through the garden, not in thunder this time, but in sorrow deeper than oceans. Adam, where are you? It was not a question seeking information, but a lament, a father searching for a child lost in disobedience. Adam's heart cracked at the sound. He wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. He wanted to answer, but words turned to ash in his throat. That he rose slowly, Eve beside him, both clothed with leaves hastily woven in shame. They stepped forward, trembling, toward the voice that had once filled them with joy. The steps of the Almighty approached, every sound of his presence both beautiful and unbearable. The garden seemed to bend in grief as he spoke again, each word carrying the weight of eternity. You ate from the tree I commanded you not to eat. Adam tried to speak, the words stumbling out. The woman you gave me, she gave me the fruit, and I ate. Eve's breath broke into sobs. The serpent deceived me, she whispered, that a silence fell. Even the leaves seemed to hold their breath. Then the Lord's voice, no longer thundering but steady, rolled across creation. Because you have done this, the words carried consequence, yet beneath them lingered mercy. The serpent would crawl in dust. Pain would enter birth and labor. Sweat would mark the ground of men. The earth would resist, yet still yield enough for survival. And death, an unfamiliar shadow, would come for them both. Tears streamed down Adam's face as the truth settled in. The garden that once sang to him now grew distant. The rivers that once reflected heaven turned dark as storm clouds gathered. The Lord looked upon them, not with hatred, but with sorrow too deep for words. Then, with hands that once shaped galaxies, he clothed them, not in leaves, but in garments of soft skin. It was a quiet gesture of love, even in judgment, a final act of tenderness before the world would break. He led them toward the gate. Eve turned one last time, eyes glistening with the reflection of paradise fading into distance. The trees shimmered faintly, the river still glowed, but an angel descended from the heights, blazing like the sun, with a flaming sword that turned every way, guarding the way back to the tree of life. The gate closed. The world beyond was wild, vast, and cold. Adam looked upon it, the barren earth, the wind that howled like grief, and took his first step into exile. Each footfall marked a separation between man and God, yet deep in his chest burned a strange, flickering hope. They walked for days, the horizon endless. Sometimes he turned to see the faint glow of Eden far behind, like a dream vanishing at dawn. Eve would cry in the night, and Adam would hold her, feeling the pulse of life within her body, the same life that God had breathed into him. Though the world had changed, that breath still lived on point one evening. As the sun fell behind the hills, Adam lifted his face to the heavens. The stars began to appear, countless, burning with quiet fire. He remembered the moment God had breathed into him, the surge of light and awareness, the feeling of belonging to something eternal. He wondered if the same God still watched them now, beyond the stars. And deep within, he felt it, a whisper not of words, but of presence. It was faint, but it was there. Eve touched her stomach, sensing something stir within her, the seed of life that would continue. A promise buried beneath sorrow. She looked at Adam, and he saw in her eyes a reflection of the same truth. Even though they had fallen, they were not abandoned. The same hands that had formed them still held the world together. Rain began to fall for the first time. It startled them, the sky weeping like a living thing. They laughed and cried as it soaked their faces. Adam opened his hands to the heavens, letting the drops strike his palms like blessings and tears intertwined. For a brief moment, he felt the nearness of the Creator again, not in the garden, not in perfection, but in the storm, in the brokenness. When the rain stopped, a strange calm settled over the land. The scent of new earth filled the air. Adam built a fire, its flames dancing in the night. He stared into it and whispered, "Even now, you are here." The years ahead would be hard. The soil would fight him, the sweat of his brow would feed his hunger, and death would one day claim him. Yet through the pain, through the distance, something eternal remained. The breath of life that no curse could extinguish. Far above, unseen by mortal eyes, light broke through the clouds for a fleeting instant. It was the same light that once filled Eden, the same that first shone when God said, "Let there be light." And in that moment, though the world had changed, heaven still watched over man. Adam took Eve's hand. Together they walked toward the dawn, toward the unknown. Behind them, the gates of Eden burned with eternal fire. Before them, the world waited, untamed, sorrowful, but alive. The breath of God still moved through the wind, whispering through the wilderness, promising that one day, through the lineage of man, redemption would come. And though Adam did not know the name, heaven already had spoken it. A Savior, born of the dust descendants, who would one day crush the serpent's head and restore what was lost. For now, Adam only knew this. He was still breathing. The same divine breath that once filled him in the garden still sustained him in exile. And in that breath lived hope. Hope that even in the ruins of paradise, the story was not over.